Learn this evening's breaking reports surrounding Wesley Fofana and Dumfries, as it's official, we want to sign both players before this window ends. To move on, we prepare ourselves for our next imminent signing in Gabriel Slonina, as the player is set to complete his medicals today, as well as Kepa loan news. So a ton of things to break down, discuss. If you guys love the content and you're excited for the new Prem season, help me get over 2.5k likes in today's video. Thanks for all the support, and getting straight into the video, I want to start things off by discussing our goalkeeper situation before spending most of the time on Dumfries and Fofana. So starting with Kepa first, it seems like he is set to be signing on loan for Napoli. Napoli are actively holding negotiations to sign Kepa on loan. They are prepared to pay 1.5 million in a loan fee. However, they would only pay around 25% of Kepa's current wages. Reports suggest that Kepa is close to earning around 200,000 a week, which is a lot of money. I'd imagine that he has like a base salary plus many additional clauses and bonuses, of course, which is how a lot of these deals actually end up working in reality. But the fact that we have this habit of covering and subsidizing most of the wages, I'm hoping that as the future goes on, we stop finding ourselves in these situations, because other big clubs just aren't doing this. Anyway, there is current contact over a loan agreement. It seems that will come very soon, and for me, you know, I'm happy for Kepa. At least his confidence has returned back over these past 18 months. He's been great competition in the squad. He has been reliable when we have turned upon him, but the reality is he has not been able to dislodge Mendy out the team, even when Mendy has had those little slight dips in his form. I think right now he's been a rich man for enough time. He must be tired of being on the bench. You know, he's still young, and Napoli presents an amazing opportunity. Let's hope he does well there, and let's hope that in the end they end up paying money to try and sign him. But knowing Italian clubs, that probably won't be the case. So now we move on to Gabriel Slonina news, and this report came out from Fabrizio Romano, has been like the #1 guy at breaking the story. And now finally we have agreed official terms and agreed a deal to sign the goalkeeper. We'll be signing for around $15 million, which is around, I think, what, 10-11 million pounds. So it's decent money for a wonder-kid goalkeeper, in my opinion. Regardless, Slonina and his agent are flying into London now, of course, to undergo his medical and sign a long-term deal, which is believed to be around maybe a 5-year or 6-year deal. I'm happy with this deal. I think this player looks like an absolute prospect, and I like the long-term thinking behind it, because one day we are going to need a successor to Mendy, and even maybe someone who's good enough to potentially even challenge him for a #1 spot. But still, it does seem like things may be a bit different now. Now that Kepa seems set to be going, the original plan before of Slonina being loaned out to Chicago Fire for 2 seasons seems to not be the case anymore, because Slonina will complete his season with Chicago Fire and then join up with our squad in January. So that tells me that he is seen as a Kepa successor, because otherwise, if Kepa is allowed to go, I'd imagine that we'd have to sign another goalkeeper. We can get by using our backup keepers at this point in time until Slonina was to come. And I'd imagine that if he was signed and if he was to come in January, he'd probably join the squads, get some cup games at least, and probably play a lot more for the under-23 team, so he can acclimatise himself to Tuchel's demands, the club, etc, before maybe at the end of next season, then going out on loan. So good luck to Gabriel. Great move. So it's great to see him join us. I think he has the potential to become a pretty special goalkeeper currently, and yeah, let's see what the future brings. So now let's end with the news by focusing on the big reports that broke today from Mr. Ornstein, detailing Wesley Fofana and Dumfries. Now let's focus on this reports first. Been many reports coming out from this country as well as France currently. But anyway, with Ornstein, at this point in time, he is the official Chelsea contact, the official connect. So he is currently giving us the most up-to-date information surrounding how the club's moving and what the plans are behind the scenes. So this is why this news is pretty significant. He reports that we are planning to add addition to the squad by signing both Fofana and Dumfries before the window ends. Of course, we have some difficulties though. Focusing on Fofana for a second. Leicester are open to selling the player as long as they receive the money they need. And it seems their valuation for Fofana is between 80 to 85 million pounds. It makes sense. When they sold Harry Maguire for all that money, there's no way they're selling Fofana than less than that. And in my opinion, I thought United kind of got scammed out of that. He cost them way too much money. Do I have the same thoughts for Fofana? I'm not too sure, but you guys hear my thoughts and opinions as this video goes on. Ornstein states in this report though that we are hoping maybe to reduce the offer by offering a player as part exchange. Now, in my head, we have to be realistic. Leicester City have their own ambitions. They want to get back into Europe. So for me, that rules out players like Ross Barkley. That rules out players like Michy Batshuayi. They need a player that has that potential to grow and improve, boost the market value over time. And options that I'd imagine would be considered would be guys like maybe Ampadu, maybe Gilmour, maybe Sheva Chalobah, maybe Levi Colwill, who Leicester City have had long-term interest in. And it's like, if you're letting Fofana leave, it makes sense for Leicester City to have Colwill included in a deal for the player. And that'd be pretty interesting in itself if that finally does get released. But regardless, though, the reality is Leicester City are not in a situation where they have to sell. So it comes down to us, our seriousness, and how much money we're willing to offer. Now, signing Fofana may not be as simple as just finding the right money. News comes out from France suggesting that Paris Saint-Germain could be potential competition. They are currently struggling to sign Skriniar. The valuation that Inter Milan want to sell the player is just way too much money. Paris Saint-Germain have that money, but the reality is that if the club doesn't think the player is worth that type of value, they won't spend that type of money. So if they rejected Skriniar, I'd imagine they'd be more willing to spend more money to try and sign Fofana. And if that's the case, things become quite difficult. Of course, Fofana is interesting. It seems like he is open to a move away. But for me, I think he's just open more to a move to a Champions League club. For him, reports state that if he was to sign for a CL team, that's going to boost his hopes of representing France in this year's World Cup. And that is a motivation for all players in particular for this season. Anyway, now that we know news on Fofana, let's talk Denzel Dumfries. It does seem like we have re-continued our efforts to try and sign the player. For me, there aren't many top quality right wing back options available in the window. I know that Jonathan Klaus was one, but he's now gone to Marseille. So for all those reports suggesting that we watched him for over 40 games, why did we have to watch him for those many games? Like, you should know literally like a handful whether he has that material for us or not. But for me, I just think considering that he would have cost us nothing, he could have been like a quality short-term option to at least take a gamble on, knowing that if it doesn't work out, you can move him on very easily in the next window. But still, it seems like Dumfries is the guy that Tuchel currently wants in his team. Inter Milan still need to raise money. Yesterday, I spoke about a young Italian midfield player called Casaide that is owned by Inter Milan, and I find it interesting that Dumfries and Casaide are being reported by figures like Damasio, plus other journalists, of course, across Europe too. So in my head, could we potentially do a deal where we hope to sign both players together to bring down the overall costs compared to signing them individually? I think that could make more sense. I think Casaide looks like a very interesting talent, very moldable in that midfield as well too. But for me, I just don't have the same type of confidence around Dumfries. Now, I think the guy is a goods player. He's done sick things for the national team. We all saw what he was doing in the Euros a few years back. He's very good going forward. I think he has limitations, so I think maybe defensively, I think maybe with crossing in the final thirds, I think maybe technically as well, so maybe he relies a bit more on power instead of like, that ability to create something with his technique in the final third. And for all those reasons, my main concerns are how future-proof is this signing. I'm really hoping that we're not going to see Reece James playing predominantly as a right centre-back. Now, as fans, it'd be easy for us to just be like, yes, of course, he has to do his bit for the team, etc., etc. But, let's not forget that he's been one of our best creative outlets for how many seasons. Before Reece James was our right-back, we had no creativity from that right-hand side for years. We struggled to find the right suitable candidate to fill that role. We have that in James, so I don't think a player of his magnitude would particularly be as impressed if he wasn't allowed to influence in the final third like he wants to. It might not matter to us, but this is how some of these guys think, yeah? And knowing that Real Madrid and other clubs are casting eyes on him, I don't want to put James in these situations where he's thinking, you know what, maybe it's time for me to move on, which I'm not going to be arrogant to assume could never ever happen. But for me, I just kind of think that money that you'd spend on a competition figure for Reece James would make more sense signing a left wing back, in my opinion. I spoke about maybe trying to sign Cucurella and just making a big money move for him. I think maybe Ben Chilwell is a lot more rotatable compared to Reece James. And whenever Ben isn't playing in the team, I feel like we lose so much pace on the left-hand side that this is an area for me that has to be corrected. I saw Mount, I saw Sterling, fantastic combination play down that left-hand side. And I saw Marcos Alonso being that key guy, regularly messing up these moves, not being fast enough to create those overloads on the left-hand side, no overlaps as well too. I just feel like I haven't seen Alonso do many favours for any wingers playing alongside him. And like, these are the details for me that have to matter and we have to fix. I just think that Dumfries, I could easily see him being a guy in the next year. We're looking to loan out again because we overspent for him. He didn't get enough game time, and he wasn't as good as we originally thought as well too. So that's the stories, but I want to end things by giving my thoughts and opinions now on Wesley Fofana. Now, I'm sure some of you guys might be guessing where I could be going with this, but I'm just going to say it, you guys, because, you know, I like to speak my truth here. Like, what's the point of watching a content creator if you're not going to get his authentic opinions? You don't have to agree with them, but at least there's a discussion and conversation around it. But for me, yeah, I can't help but think I'm looking at guys like Mark Gay. I'm looking at guys like Tomori, for example, and I'm thinking, I feel like Fofana is part of that same bracket as all these men. So if we were to spend double the money of like the value of a Gay or a Tomori on Fofana, who literally has just come back from a leg-breaking injury where, you know, the good news is he isn't affected by that. He has fully recovered away from that leg break, so we can't use that against him. But in terms of just his overall game and price, I'm not understanding the principles behind a move like this. You know, I go back to Mark Gay. He literally is someone that is needed on that left-hand side. One of the best progressive passers, one of the top young defenders in the Prem. Are you telling me that Fofana's debut season was levels above what Gay did? Like, if you think so, please let us know in the comment section below. But be honest, what are the main differences that you saw, if you even realised? I just think that it's a typical Chelsea thing of never trusting what we have and then always being quick to overspend even more just because we have more confidence because they played for a different team. It doesn't make as much sense to me at times. I think Fofana is a great player, but when I look at him, he's a guy that is moldable. He is a player that is going to need time to grow. So if you guys have any thoughts of him coming here and being levels above Christensen and other options we have, he's a lot more rawer than them. So don't get too excited. But I think that's okay. I think when you're young, you have to have that license to be in an environment to grow and improve over the years. I think it's a manager's job as well too to help, you know, push the growth of players and help them become better. And I think some managers that maybe focus way too much on tactics only, they can forget and miss that side. And sometimes their players don't really level up because there was no real football, because there was no football that allowed them to grow and improve. I think Fofana is very good technically at playing out from the back. I think that he's got decent aerial ability. He's not like super commanding, but he's young. So by the time his body fills up and he's like 23, 24 years old, I can imagine him being even strong in the air as time goes on. He's a proactive defender. He's someone that likes to leave his defensive line, engage high up the field, and most of the times he does win his duels. That doesn't mean he's perfect. I think he has that tendency to get beaten by players who are good at dribbling on the ground. You know, at times, you know, if you're a defender that's looking to engage higher up and maybe you get the situation wrong or you're a bit too hasty, which at times Fofana can be, then you're going to get done by a smart winger. I think there are improvements, for example, that he can work on. But I think there's other details like his control of the ball. You know, he can miscontrol the ball at times. I think when he's getting pressed onto his weaker foot, because he's a very right-footed player, that's when he can be more prone to these types of mistakes. But I'm not bringing up some of these flaws as if, okay, he's not good enough, forget about him. I'm trying to just paint a realistic picture that we are talking about someone that is 21, basically missed the entirety of last season as well too, has great potential, but is still not exactly that finished product. So if we sign him, tell yourself now, I need to have patience. I think over time in 2-3 years, he can be potentially an elite defender, but only time will tell. And I'd imagine that with the type of price fee that it would take to sign him to begin with, he'll definitely get all the time in the world to be able to grow, make mistakes, come back from them, and become a better player over time. So let's see what happens with these stories, you guys. A lot's happening. Expect more players to be signed. Expect more players to leave. I think that's where I'm really focusing my attentions on now. Will both Ziyech and Werner leave? And if they do, I'd imagine we'd have to sign a replacement for them. But regardless, there'll be discussions for another video. I'm going to bounce and keep things moving. How do you feel about Fofana and Dumfries? Let us all know. And on that note, I'm the EFC. This is BlueLionsTV. I'll catch you guys later with some more videos.